My first question for you is, what do you love about your community that you want the rest of Calgary to know about?
Well, the ideal thing about living downtown is you're right in the center core of Calgary, and everything is close. Like all your needs can be filled within 3 blocks. So it's convenient. And
Mhm.
for anybody who is challenged in any way, it makes it quite accessible to them. So I think, and there's a prestige with living downtown.
My next question would be, tell us a little bit about yourself and your community projects and what made you apply for community grants.
Well, I've always, when I first became disabled and moved into Baker House, I found that everybody was extremely reclusive. Like nobody we have 250 residents in this building, and for the first year, I may have met 7,
Wow.
10, just the ones that come around.
Mhm.
And I don't, I'm an extrovert. I just love being around people. And this was I wasn't happy. So
Mhm.
I came to Claire, who was the tenant liaison, and I said, is there something that we can do, to get some people together?
Mhm.
And she goes, if you have an idea, bring it to me and we'll take a look at it. And I came up with the idea of a chess club because I played chess for the last 40 years.
Oh, yeah.
And we made a small investment and started Baker House Chess Club. And it was really neat. We had a lot of people that come and play. There was people come and watch,
Mhm.
people come and learn. Um, you know, Sometimes we'd have 2 people playing and 10 people talking. It just, when that stopped, um, it planted the seeds. And when the grants came along, I applied immediately. And like I said, we had a grand opening where we had about 40 people come, and then you have 20 people that stayed to play chess, and
Nice.
that went for months. So it was that sold me on the idea. And then I was invited to sit on the advisory council, which works with the projects. Really enjoy that. And from there, like, we had ideas for the community garden for this summer, and then the winter
Mhm.
gardening for this winter coming up. A neat thing that happened from the chess club, and it still goes on today without me, is that there's people that don't play chess,
Mhm.
but there's a group of ladies that come down into the lounging area and play Scrabble,
Oh,
and they
nice.
play every single night. And this is because suddenly that space was a safe space, a space where you could come out of your apartment and sit and play.
Mhm.
There's groups of, we now have groups of maybe 5 or 6 people get together every other night or so just to gossip, have a
Yeah,
chat.
that's awesome.
And this is directly from the chess club. And of course, there was some negative in the building. But when you have 6'1", 280 pounds, walking around authoritatively orchestrating chess clubs and things like that, people tend to think, yeah, this is a safe space. We can come there. Even now that I'm busy with other projects, I find now that it's carried on, and people carry on with that.
That's great.
Yeah, it is
Yeah.
very small percentage, but it's a percentage nevertheless. So I needed to find a stepping stone for what my goals and aspirations were, because I went from very community involved to disabled and completely isolated, and I had to find a way back to being community involved again.
Mhm.
It was very simple. I did not want to be in my apartment twiddling my thumbs. I needed to have that interaction.
Mhm.
But from that, I have become, I started playing competitive chess again, which is very stressful. But it's a lot of fun too.
Mhm.
But with the Calgary Chess Club, I started volunteering with them, and now I sit on their board of directors as their secretary,
Nice.
and that helps me more because I meet more people in social settings that I can make aware of the community efforts that we're making here.
Mhm.
So now the word gets spread to people who can actually influence and make changes,
Mhm.
and do things. So that for me has been one of my accomplishments.
What relationships or connections have you made through this project, and how did those connections help your project?
Well, the biggest thing that I found is that the connections that I've been able to make through these projects were, for example, you have the community projects with the city of Calgary. Obviously, Calgary Housing, and I now have connections within the command structure above who just works in the building,
Mhm.
managers and supervisors and things like this. The city of Calgary, you obviously have the chess club and anything that runs away from that.
Mhm.
So there's all kinds of the spin-off is, for example, at the Calgary Chess Club, there is a fellow that no longer even belongs to the Calgary Chess Club, heard about my community projects and has asked, is there something I can do to help? Can I volunteer? Can I come and help? And when we're working on other projects, I have a very short list and a small list of people that are outside of the community that I would have never met if I didn't go through 2 or 3 different avenues.
My next question is, how has being involved in community work through projects like yours helped develop your confidence and leadership skills?
I spent 40 years in the Merchant Marines, and
Wow.
I was made it to first mate, which is second in command. So
Wow.
I've always had the ability to lead. I have not always had the courage to lead, but
Mhm.
I've always had the ability to. And I guess in my circumstance now, I just needed the right triggers to build the confidence to lead. But
Mhm.
what's really interesting, and I'm very humble with this, is that when I ventured into grants and community projects in the community, I found that I could learn a lot from managers, supervisors, social workers. Joy Neustrom is my mentor.
Mhm.
And although my specialty may be in shipping and big ships, I'm quite a novice when it comes to human interaction, and there has been not much of a learning curve, but I've had to adjust the way how I present myself and things like this.
Right.
So I think to answer your question is that all the people that I involve myself in, from other volunteers and leaders in the volunteer community, have been a great resource to give me that confidence
Mm.
and sort of keep me on the straight and narrow, because I go off road all the time. I mean, on a serious note, uh, there's a very rigorous protocol to follow when you're dealing with the public,
Mm.
and that was probably the biggest learning curves that I had to go through, is learning the policies and the principles that you have to follow in order not to offend or, you know.
Right.
So it was interesting because for me, as a sailor, you could only imagine I have rough edges. So Joy Nystrom smooths those rough edges out really well.
Okay, my next question is, given your experiences, sounds like you have a lot of experience, different kinds of experiences, but what is one step or action that you recommend for others wanting to engage in community work and explore grants?
I think now we do this in part when somebody is interested in a grant, they go through a little introduction. But what I think would be absolutely great if there was an actual workshop set up to teach volunteers how to be volunteers.
Mm.
And, you know, from there, then they can be introduced to grants and have some knowledge of the work, because I think a lot of people shy away from it because they think they wouldn't be capable of doing it, or they don't have the knowledge or the resources, and they don't realize that a lot of the work will be done for them in preparation, and then they'll have the support once they get started. But I think if there was a workshop to give them a knowledge base of what they're getting into, they may be more receptive of saying, yeah, I could do that.
Right.
I think that would be the one thing that would be good. The other thing, there is one other thing that I would love. There's a lot of community projects that deal with seniors. And let's call the kettle black. In a lot of cases, seniors are just aged and they live a completely normal life, just in a group setting of people their own age. For Baker House, not to pick on Baker House, but because I live here and I'm intimately involved with it, the challenge of things like mental illness, disabilities, and things like this present an enormous challenge to overcome some of those obstacles to bring people together. And I teach this to everybody. Don't judge, because you never know. And I tell everybody, I tell them, I says, you know what? Everybody has a story.
Okay, well, my last question here is, in one word, what do you imagine for the future of your community?
Oh, I wish you could see the notes. I put in one word, impossible. Because I'm possible. When you think about it, it's nothing's impossible because I'm possible.